You're at a party. People are laughing. Music is playing. Everyone seems fine. And you're already planning the excuse you'll use to leave early. Not because you're having a bad time. Not because you don't like the people there. But something about that place is draining you. The noise. The movement. The sheer number of people in one space. And the worst part? You can't explain it. Because if someone asked what's wrong, you wouldn't have an answer. Nothing is wrong. It just feels like too much. Like your brain is picking up a signal nobody else can hear. And here's what's strange about that feeling. Most people assume it's shyness, or anxiety, or just being introverted. But Dr. Elaine Aron, a research psychologist who has been studying this since the 1990s, found something far more specific. Around 15 to 20% of people have a nervous system that is genuinely wired differently. Not broken. Not disordered. Just built to absorb more information from the environment than most people ever notice. And for those people, a crowded place isn't just uncomfortable. It's overwhelming in a way that's completely invisible to everyone around them. So if you've ever left a crowded place feeling exhausted for no obvious reason, what you're about to hear might finally explain why. The feeling starts the moment you walk in. Not gradually. Immediately. Your brain shifts into a different mode. And while everyone else simply exists in that space, you start processing everything. First it's just noise. Then it's too much noise. Then it's too many people. Then it's everything at once. And suddenly, a room full of people becomes the loneliest place you've ever been. And here's the strange part. Some people can spend 2 hours at a crowded party and feel more exhausted than someone who worked all day physically. And the cost of that shows up later. Not the tiredness of a long day. It's that tiredness you can't explain. The feeling of getting home and needing to just sit in silence. Not watch anything. Not talk to anyone. Just stop. And if you've ever tried to explain that to someone, you already know exactly how that conversation goes. But you seemed fine. You were laughing the whole time. I didn't notice anything. And that's exactly the problem. Because the exhaustion doesn't show on the outside. It happens underneath everything. Underneath the smile. Underneath the conversation. Underneath every moment you seemed completely present. And were completely overwhelmed. Most people stop here. Accept the label of too sensitive and move on. But science went deeper. And what it found completely changes the way you see this. Psychologist Elaine Aron spent decades studying this pattern. And found that some people genuinely process environments more deeply than others. And for most people, it started at home. In a place where silence could mean something was wrong. Where you learned to read people's faces before you spoke. Where truly relaxing never felt completely safe. Your brain learned to scan everything, because at some point, it had to. And the brain doesn't unlearn what once kept you safe. It just keeps doing it. Everywhere. Day after day. Until someone finally explains why. And the people around you probably got it wrong for years. Called you antisocial. Too quiet. Too picky. Too much in your head. But here's what they missed. You don't hate people. You hate what happens to you when there are too many of them at once. There's a difference. And maybe you've noticed this yourself. Think about a conversation that actually stayed with you. It was probably with one person. Probably somewhere quiet. Probably without any rush. Crowds don't allow any of that. But the moment a space becomes too loud, too full, too unpredictable, something inside you doesn't just feel uncomfortable. You start to lose yourself. And that's the part nobody talks about. The noise isn't the real problem. The problem is that the noise makes it impossible to hear yourself. And for someone who relies on their inner world to feel grounded, losing that signal, even temporarily, feels like losing something essential. So if you've spent years thinking something was wrong with you, just because crowded places feel unbearable in a way you could never quite explain, here's what's actually true. Your brain never stopped paying attention. Not in childhood. Not now. Not even when you desperately wanted it to. And that kind of mind doesn't thrive in noise. It thrives in depth. In quiet. In meaning. In conversations that actually go somewhere. Not because you're broken, but because you were built for a different kind of connection. The world will keep telling you to be more social, to go to more parties, to push through the discomfort, to get used to it. And maybe sometimes that's useful advice. But maybe what's more useful is finally understanding why you feel what you feel. Because there's a difference between someone who avoids people and someone who simply can't be themselves around too many of them at once. You were never antisocial. You were just waiting for an environment that didn't cost so much to exist in. And maybe that's enough to know.